So we have Tony, who identifies as a theist, and also he, him in Virginia. And he's talking about going through deconstruction, but has lingering fears and is stopping kind of at the final steps. And so, Tony, tell us about what you're going through at the moment.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and that was an excellent introduction. I appreciate that very much. And just to give a little bit of backstory, I grew up in the church, attended church all my life. I went to college to go into ministry. I worked in youth ministry. And in the course of my studies into I guess, the early Christian church and the way a lot of the tenets of Christian faith were established and so forth. And also just looking into details of the theology of who the Christian God is. I use the phrase, the closer I looked, the more I started to see the cracks. And things didn't make as much sense to me the more I looked. And I found myself in kind of this perplexing position where, I not to toot my own horn or anything, but I fancy myself, of a certain level of intelligence. And I'm kind of like, God, you gave me this brain and this ability to question and think logically and rationally and to understand complex concepts and ideas. And the more I utilize that gift that you've given me, the less sense you make. And that in and of itself was very difficult for me. And so that, coupled with the fact that I lost a very good friend of mine to cancer, 12 years ago. And when that happened, I was studying to go into the ministry on a Christian college campus. I was attending church at a Christian church, working as a youth minister at that church. And I was going through the hardest period of my life, having lost my best friend, and never felt more alone. I didn't have anybody checking up on me. I didn't have anybody saying, hey man, you doing okay? And I was missing classes. I was missing engagements with friends. I was missing fraternity events and things like that. And all the signs were there that I was going through something dark. And I'm like, supposedly all these people are indwelt with the same Holy Spirit that I think that I'm indwelt with. Why the heck is nobody checking in on me here? Why am I just drifting alone? And that sent me to some dark places. I don't want to trigger anybody, but you can draw your own conclusions. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. So over the last, 12 years, I've been going through this period. At first, it was just sort of like living however I want. But then I sort of came back to a place of I don't really know what I believe. And I'm trying to piece it together. And I still have I'll call it what it is. It's a desire. I have a desire to I want there to be some meaning and some purpose to life beyond the tangible universe. I want there to be something supernatural. I want there to be some meaning behind this. And I think that may be the linchpin that's keeping me holding on. But there are also these lingering doubts in the back of my mind that, if I were to die tomorrow, that, I'd be staring Satan or God or some other entity in the face, and, that these things that I believe my whole life are actually true. And, I'm sure you guys have been there if you've ever been a theist before. So that is as succinct a background as I can give you. And I guess I'm at the point where I either want to just decide that I believe that there's some purpose and meaning to life, and I'm just looking for that, or that there's nothing and move forward with whatever that means. And I don't really feel any overwhelming push in either direction. Just trying to make sense of things. Ultimately, truth is what matters to me. Facts are what matters to me. I want to know what is factually accurate and true. I don't just want to delude myself into complacency,
I want to first start by being like, that is, you're joking about as succinct as you could make it, but it's actually very rich in detail. Your story also, I'm want to acknowledge like how difficult it is to go through those things alone, and that I'm sorry that happened, that you were just sort of left hanging, and people that you were told, or your community, and you have this in common with, that, you know, you have the same Holy Spirit inside of you, simply weren't there, because that makes it so much harder to kind of keep enduring through difficult things when you've always been told you'll be sustained through these difficult things, you'll be given this energy and, you know, this community, and then it just disappears when things get hard. That sucks so bad. So just mentioning that, but your story is, I relate to so many aspects of it a lot. One big one is this fear of hell. Like I've mentioned on the show before, that I had a hard time letting that go. And even if I intellectually knew, and even through reading the Bible, I'm like, hell is not as we, as, you know, an evangelical church would have ever described it. Knowing that wasn't enough, because it had been so deeply ingrained into my faith. My conception of myself had to be a little different, because I'm like, where does my morality come from? I felt like if I let it all go, it would become so chaotic, and I wouldn't be able to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. There was always sort of a manuscript of, or not manuscript, but like a sequence you would go through, that if you don't know what to do, you know, read the Bible, talk to a pastor, pray, and it would just sort of come to you. And if I didn't have that to do, then how would I find my own morality? It's scary to lose all of that. It's also scary to tell people in your life who knew you as a Christian that you don't believe that anymore, that you've moved forward. I think I'm curious, I guess, about, you mentioned that you're at this point where you want to sort of choose one or the other. Why are you feeling urgency around that choice? And it's hard to sit in this middle where you're not sure yet, but it feels like you feel a push to sort of make something feel final. What's happening there?
You know, I don't know. I haven't really considered that. That's something I think I might chew on for a little bit. But I think to a large extent, it's an aspect of my personality. I don't like making decisions. I don't like making choices. And so I will sit down and I will wrestle with a thing and I will make my decision. And then unless compelling evidence comes along to convince me to change that decision or change that decision, I'll stick to it. Like I decided what my style of dress was going to be 25 years ago, and I haven't changed. Like there's just different colors, but otherwise it's the same shirt, same jeans, same, you know, like I have one outfit in multiple colors because I don't want to have to make that decision anymore, you know. And I just want to get to a point where I'm like, okay, this is what I believe, this is why I believe it, and don't want to think about it anymore. And it's just sort of it's the way I operate. It's very annoying to any significant others I've had in my life. But I don't know. I don't know if there's anything pressing aside from the fact that I guess maybe I want some peace of mind. I want, if there truly is nothing more than what exists in the corporeal universe, and when we're gone, we simply cease to exist, then I want to begin operating in that to maximize the time that I have here and make the most out of what I have here. And if there's not, and if it is the case that there is some purpose or some meaning behind it, like even if it's not within the Christian faith, you know, if it's something other than that, that I want to begin operating in that and pursuing that to the highest level that I'm capable of. And as I've been deconstructing, I realized that, you know, growing up as a Christian, when I heard other faiths and belief structures and philosophies and so forth, I sort of addressed them the same way that we kind of address the ancient Greek and Roman pantheons of gods. You know, we talk about Greek and Roman mythology and we dismiss it with that word mythology. And I think that overlooks the fact that for the better part of however many hundreds of years, you know, much of the known world lived and died under those religions. You know? And people would, when I learned about Buddhism and Confucianism and Hinduism and Islam and all the other religions out there, I dismissed them with that same, like, oh, well, I know what the truth is. These are just quaint little folk beliefs of other people around the world, but I know what the truth is. I know what reality is. And so I stepped back and I said, I've never really addressed these other faiths on their own terms. And I started looking into them more deeply and more genuinely. And as I've done that, there are certain ideals and tenets that are almost universal. The Golden Rule, for example, shows up in some way, shape, or form in so many different philosophies from around the world, which I think is something relating to human nature, the fact that we all just want to be treated a certain way. But, I've come to this idea that what if the point of religion is to grow beyond the need for it? What if...
Well, I like that phrasing.
It's our training wheels to get us to a point where we no longer require the promise of paradise or the threat of damnation to be a good person. We simply become good people because it's the right thing to do. And maybe that's what this is really all about. And, that's sort of the limb that I'm on right now, is wondering if we're not simply meant to grow beyond the need for, threats, carrots or sticks, if you prefer.
I think
people, because I don't mean to hijack the show here. I could talk forever.
No, we're not. We're letting you're saying interesting things we care about. You're not hijacking things. It's fine.
Yeah, and I think you're going in the right direction, and I think you're going to be going in a similar direction that both of us have gone on. I want to point out something interesting that you're saying with, like, the idea that what if religion is meant for us to grow beyond it. And I think that's an okay thing to start from based on where we're at in this conversation. But looking at a lot of the things that religion has done, unfortunately, we start off, our training wheels are incredibly flawed, and our training wheels stick with us. We have a bias that goes forward. We have things that we anchor on. We have things that, like, our brain has developed kind of around the society that we live in and around the stimuli that we perceive and the way that we look at the world. And even if there are some things that are positive that religion has done, there's also a lot of garbage that we're taught. And if we're letting that be our training wheels, that can be incredibly problematic. And that's why people have trauma in leaving religion. And so I'm not saying that everything that we learn from that is something that we need to throw away. But I would maybe suggest using some caution and saying that, like, religion is something that we have, like, that has as a purpose and letting us grow from it. I see the desire of wanting to have a positive spin on things that we used to believe, or a positive outlook on things that happened to us. But I think maybe I want to ask you this question of, why do you feel like you need to hold on to these pieces? I get it's hard to let things go, but I think really what's going to help us go in a direction is kind of unpacking what's keeping you in this space.
Well, I do want to respond to something that you said there before I move on.
Yeah, go for it.
That the religion has done terrible things, and so often on the show, I hear your hosts talk about the importance of defining terms, and maybe I should have done that initially. I would define religion as the belief structures in and of themselves, and not necessarily the deeds and actions of those interpreting those belief structures and so forth. Not to say that there aren't negative aspects of the belief structures, but ostensibly, in a very broad sense, I think of religion as the thing which seeks to tell us how to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. They don't all get it right, but that is ostensibly sort of what their raison d'etre is, so to speak. So that's, I appreciate the correction on that. That's helpful. But I guess the thing that's keeping me holding on is a desire to make the right choice. I don't want to go out on a limb until I'm 100% certain it's not going to break and fall out from under me. And if the consequences of going out on the wrong limb means spending eternity in the wrong place, or not making the most out of my life. I mean, the stakes couldn't be higher.
But are you going to be 100% sure either way? Can you achieve that?
I know that's a hard question.
It's a hard question, but like, I get the paralysis of wanting to make the right decision and not being able to move because you're not sure where to go. But like, and that's the unfortunate thing here, is that at some point you're going to have to accept something that you're not 100% certain about. And you don't have to be, like, that's not the expectation. Like, it's going to come down to, what am I like more certain of? And even in that, like, you don't have to necessarily jump to something else to have a sense of, this thing that I'm currently in is not it. And I think that's where a lot of us end up starting, and a lot of us are still there. Like, we don't necessarily know what the right thing is. A lot of us would call ourselves agnostic atheists, to say, I don't know for certain any of these things, but I'm pretty comfortable in saying it's not Christianity. I'm pretty confident in saying it's not Islam. It's not these other things. I don't know what it is exactly. I have some ideas about what is real in this universe, but like, I'm not as worried about like, what is the thing I jump to, but at least I can narrow down my answer choices and say, well, this one's not a right answer. And so maybe that's comforting in a way of, like, it's scary to not have certainty, but more of us are in that space of like, I'm not really certain of anything. I'm just more comfortable at saying this is less likely to be true. And that's where I'm at. And I'm curious to hear both of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I want to address a couple things, and then I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to get to like our kind of one last caller, and we're reaching the end of the show. But first, I would want to say that the discussion over what religion is or isn't is interesting and difficult, and also happens in atheist spaces, because not all atheists feel the same way about the faith that they left. Not all atheists ever had a faith. So there's quite a bit of diversity of what we think, and you can still feel like you got these good things from faith and religion, and now you don't believe it, but still acknowledge those things. I personally have a hard time kind of finding a middle there. I think that there were I don't know who I would be if I wasn't without it, but that's simply because, or if I didn't grow up with religion, but that's simply because I can't know. I don't know if it was better for me or worse for me. I can tell you ways in which both could be argued. But I think for me, like, I eventually sort of asked myself, what evidence would convince me of a God, and what evidence do I need to believe the Bible specifically? And I needed more confirmation of the text personally. I needed to figure, like, is this reliable? Who actually wrote it? How do we know? How is this decided? And the more I got into that, the more I was like, all right, that was the evidence I would need. And it was coming up incredibly short in ways that I had never known before. So I'm curious as to what evidence are you looking for? Because you're looking for an answer, but what could that answer look like for you? I feel like we've asked you a lot of really big questions too. And I think
42.
Okay, sorry.
And even, of course, like, I want us to kind of get through these points, but I would love for you to also call back other times, because I feel like we have an infinite amount of things we can discuss with you, and you've been a very polite and genuine caller. And so even if there's things we don't get to today, I still want to have these conversations. I would love for us to keep discussing.
Yeah, I think we've given you a lot of big questions
Yeah.
that we ask ourselves too. And unfortunately, we got to get going. So I'm going to drop you. But thank you so much for calling. And please call back, because I want to know, give you some time to think about this, and then call back and let us know what you think. So I'm super curious about that. So I am.
Thank you both for the time and for the thoughtful questions. And just to summarize everything, I think whatever is going to make me the best version of myself is going to be the answer that I'm ultimately looking for. So
Okay.
whatever that may be, I don't know, but that's ultimately what I'm striving towards. And I've certainly taken a lot out of my faith in the past, but I've also become a much better version of myself moving away from my faith, because, my Christian faith, put me against LGBT issues and things like that. And I've since come around and being like, no, like, people are people, and, love is love and everything else.
Yeah.
So there's something to be had in all areas of human experience. But thank you again. I don't want to keep any further, and I will definitely